Start back up. Here we go. We're working on the tech. Welcome everyone, and thanks for coming out to this special afternoon event. It's not often we have the opportunity to have 4 distinguished alumni, all in the same field, come to campus at the exact same time. In January, as part of an alumni trip to California, President Halstead and I had the pleasure of meeting 3 of our 4 guests at a dinner that Paul Pape hosted at the Los Angeles Athletic Club. It was an opportunity to meet these true professionals. Interestingly, they did not even know each other prior to that meeting, and they were able to reconnect with their alma mater, in some cases, for the first time in a very long time. Over the course of that evening, the consistent theme that came up was, what can we do to give back to Brockport? Well, this is the first answer to that question. Already today, they've been to classes and had lunch with students. This afternoon, they'll share their stories with you about how Brockport prepared them for their careers, the interesting twists and turns along the way, and what they are doing as veterans in the entertainment industry. You'll hear about many of the aspects of the business, from writing to production to acting. You'll hear great stories and discover that with hard work and a few breaks, anything is possible. So let's meet each of our honored guests, who will spend about 10 minutes discussing their own careers. Then we'll give you an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the program. Back in 1992, when Brockport celebrated its 125th anniversary. Now don't ask about the math. It shows that we are celebrating our 175th anniversary just 19 years after our 125th. But back in 1992, our first guest came back to talk to students about his career. He is the preeminent screenwriter to come out of our institution, with such credits as The Land Before Time, Amazing Stories, and many more. And now he is even a college professor, teaching at the University of Southern California and UC Riverside. Let's welcome back from the class of 1973, Stewart Krieger. Our next 2 alumni were stars of the stage at Brockport in the early 1970s, with both taking part in many productions as theater majors. One left Brockport and starred in the classic movie Saturday Night Fever alongside John Travolta. He has many other acting credits to his name, but now may be known more for his production work and voiceovers. So when he speaks, close your eyes and try to think of which of the 5,000 voiceover roles from which you know him. Our next alumnus has had a productive acting career in both television and the movies, including roles on Boston Legal, Desperate Housewives, and even Seinfeld on TV, and in the movies with RoboCop and Patriot Games. They have stayed fast friends and traveled back to campus together. Let's welcome back 2 members of the class of 1974, Paul Pape and Jesse Goins. And finally, the most commonly uttered words around this event and this alumnus since we announced we would be holding Hollywood Returns to Brockport have been, I know him. I didn't know he went to Brockport. He dabbled in some productions at the college and was encouraged to go into acting, even though he expected to have a career in law enforcement. His roles and career have continued to grow and expand, with prominent roles in a number of critically acclaimed and popular movies and television series, such as Crash, Black Hawk Down, Date Night, Invasion, Prison Break, and many more. Like our other 3 guests, he is incredibly proud of his time at Brockport and his degree, and even has a great story to tell you about the Blue Angels and a quick flight over campus a few years ago. Please welcome our 4th alumnus from the class of 1978, Bill Fichtner. Now our guests will speak in the order they were introduced for about 10 minutes, and as I said, we'll have questions and answers at the end. So without waiting any longer, let's get started. Here's Stu Krieger.
All right. So one of the first things that we were asked to talk to you guys about is sort of our time at Brockport and how that time influenced our subsequent careers. And for me, one of the most important aspects about being here was the fact that I was one of the very, very first communications majors when that major was just starting to develop and didn't really have a wide trajectory. And one of the things that was so great about my education was the faculty was so incredibly willing to work with us as individuals to figure out what it was we wanted to do, to figure out what kind of classes we needed to augment that curriculum to the point that by the end of my junior year, I had taken all the classes that were really relevant to the major. And I went to my chief advisors, Ron and Sarah Watts. I know Sarah is still affiliated with the college. And they said, why don't we see if we can put together an overseas program that might be helpful to you. And with their help, we created a program, which became an exchange program at the University of Central London. And a roommate and I got to go over there. We took writing classes, we took photography classes. We got to be there for an entire semester. And that program only happened because the faculty was willing to work with us and make sure we got as complete and helpful an education as we can. And that's been something, I've really, really taken to heart, especially now that I'm a professor, is working with students as individuals, making sure their needs are being met, making sure they're getting the opportunities that are really going to be helpful and beneficial once they get out into the real world. So, making that segue into the real world, as I said to students earlier today, I was somebody that from a really freakishly early age knew I wanted to be in the entertainment business. I had absolutely no idea why, but it started when I was 5 or 6 years old. I used to take pictures out of the family photo album and send them, put them in the mail to Walt Disney Studios, and I would say in the letter, I'm a really cute redhead, you should put me in a movie. And my mother would come back and say, what happened to that picture? I don't know. And one of the most kind of like the full circle things is, those of you who have had a chance to look at my IMDb resume, as a large part of my career was spent working for Disney, working for the Disney Channel, making movies for them. And there was something really wonderful about the trajectory of that to be able to end up where I thought it was going to be when I was 6 years old. And the path to get there was one of just knowing what you want to do, having the focus, and then the word I've already used once today, and probably used more than once during this presentation, is about being proactive. That you have to make your opportunities, you have to take your chances, you have to throw yourself out there in just any possible way you can think of. Just start making contacts, especially in show business. It's really a business that's every bit as much about your contacts and your relationships as it is about your talent. And so when I moved to LA, I just blanketed the town with resumes for every possible job that was in any way relevant. So I applied to be a critter at Disneyland, and I thought, yeah, I'm the right size to be Chipperdale, that could happen. And tried to be a page at NBC, tried to be a tour guide at Universal, just anything I could think of. I got a job in a newspaper. As soon as I was at the newspaper, I started getting, after a short while, to do celebrity interviews and movie reviews and attend events that I was writing up for the paper. And every time I was there, I would shake hands. Hi, I'm Stu Krieger, I work in the Herald Examiner. How'd you get your first agent? How'd you get your first job? And just, constantly asking questions. And the great thing about our business, and I think these guys will vouch, is people want to be helpful. They want you to succeed. And as long as you can kind of walk that line between knowing when to be aggressive and when it's appropriate to be in the background and just gauging the mood and, seeing your opportunities and go for them, things will happen. And so what I learned by being at the Herald was that I needed to be writing all of the time. I needed to be producing a body of work that I could start sending out to agents, because as a writer, nothing happens without an agent, and a lot of that is simply a legal consideration, that most production companies and producers and studios don't want to read scripts that just come in over the transom because 5 years later they produce something like it and you want to sue them and say you stole my idea. So you need to get an agent. So while I was at the newspaper, I started contacting agents and writing query letters and sending out scripts, and I finally got somebody who called me and said, I read the script, I really like it, come meet with me. And I met with him, and eventually he put me in touch with a producer who was doing a very, very low budget, coming of age teen story that I just found out from a student at Riverside is currently streaming on Netflix. And the really very frightening thing about that, because nothing goes away, is it is my one and only time on screen as an actor that happened because it was such an incredibly low budget film. I was reading with the actors because they couldn't hire a casting director, and about the 5th day of auditions, the director said, you're funnier than anybody we've seen, you want the part? And I said, no, I don't. And he said, yeah, you do. And I ended up in the movie. And the woman who played my girlfriend is now my wife of 30 years. And the thing that is both wonderful and frightening about that is now to have students go, I was watching this movie and there's this young pink version of you, I think, with this giant afro. Yeah, that was me. So the good news and bad news of your career is nothing ever goes away. And out of that, I consider myself very fortunate in that each year there was kind of incremental steps forward. So after I did that film, I did another film for the same production company that then got me hired by another company. And at the time, my girlfriend / current wife was working for Gary Marshall. And Gary was doing Happy Days and Mork and Mindy and Laverne and Shirley. And he read a script of mine that he really liked, and he optioned it. And then he got hired to do his first feature film, which was Young Doctors in Love, and he hired me to do a rewrite on that, and that was really the beginning in the big leagues. So by working with Gary, and again, the contacts and relationships, that got me to other producers, that got me other meetings, that got me other jobs, and then kind of the seminal moment of my career in getting to do The Land Before Time for Steven Spielberg and George Lucas was because I was working on Amazing Stories TV show, and again, something that's really, really, really important is knowing who you are as a writer and an actor, having a good sense of self. At that point, the reason I ended up working on Amazing Stories and working for Spielberg was because everything I had done to that point was kind of young-centric and about young characters in high school and all of that stuff. And I realized writers get typecast as quickly as actors do. And I was starting to be the teen guy. And every call I was getting was about a teen thing. And I wanted to have a broader career. And so I took time out. I wrote a spec script that was by far and away the most naked and autobiographical thing I had done. It was about 4 generations of a family coming together for a family reunion that was naked enough to the point when my mother kept begging me to read it. And I said, the only way I'm letting you read it is if you're a grown-up, because it's just, it is what it is. And I got a voice message on my machine with her in that little, what I call the goat voice, when there's a little tremble in the voice. And she said, well, it doesn't hurt to find you're not perfect, but it's a beautiful piece of work and we're proud of you. And then never talked about the script again. That was the end of that. But the important part of that was the script that got Spielberg's attention, that got me hired on Land Before Time. And I will say this, and then I'm going to jump off and defer to these guys, was what I learned from that's been invaluable through the rest of my life and career was that by taking a chance, by putting myself out there, by getting naked, and by that I mean just going to the bone and revealing a whole lot of stuff that rang true to the people who read it. That's what got me to Spielberg. That's what got me to Land Before Time. It's got me a bunch of television shows. And the really last button important thing about that is that script never did get made. It was optioned several times, and Penny Marshall wanted to direct it for a while, Mark Rydell wanted to direct it. It never got made. But it's one of the most important things I did in my career. And it was taking that leap and knowing it was time to grow up and move on. That was that.
Wow. Well, he says nothing bad ever goes away. And I'm sitting here on a stage that I did 9 main stage productions on in the 70s, and nothing good ever goes away either, because they were great times. And I'm very grateful to be back here to be able to share my journey a little bit for whatever it's worth. And but I'm mostly thrilled to be back here. I haven't been stepped foot at this stage in probably 37 years. So it's really cool to be here. So thank you. I was a theater major here. I got my degree in theater. Jesse and I graduated together. We both have been accepted into graduate schools, University of Michigan, both of us, Penn State. But I was performing in one of my last plays here called The Scarecrow by Percy McKay. It was a 1910 melodrama. And an adjudicator for the New York State Arts Council came through, and he was judging plays. And he happened to see me perform, and he asked me what I was doing after school, and I said I was thinking about graduate school. And he said, well, how would you like to get started with a career, with your career, and join an acting company in New York City before beginning? And I thought about it, and I said, okay, I was ready to go. Frankly, tired of school, so it was time. So I jumped 2 weeks after I graduated from Brockport. I joined an acting company in New York. I was one of the original 15 members of a company known as the Colonnades Theater Lab. And in that original 15, all of us that were unknown were Danny DeVito, Rio Perlman, Michael O'Keefe, Jeff Goldblum, Peter Scolari. A really great group of people. We all trained alongside each other as a repertory company and learned. I then went off Broadway, started doing some off-Broadway plays, and we were talking about studying before. I studied at HP Studios. I was on observer status at the Actors Studio. Keeping jobs, keeping body and soul together, working the jobs. And then I had an opportunity to audition for my very first film. I figured I had nothing to lose. I'd go all out. And much to my amazement, without a union card or anything, I landed 15 weeks of work and was cast to co-star in what became known as Saturday Night Fever. And it was quite a launching to come right out of the gate. It also taught me a lot that we're in business as well as in art. It was an awful lot to take on, because of those of you that were around during that period, you know that that was more than just a hit movie. It was a very big phenomenon. So that was an awful lot to ask of a young 24-year-old who'd never been exposed to that kind of thing before. And I learned a great deal about that. Maybe we'll get into that a little more later. At one point, I decided to step back because it was so overwhelming, and I was so identified with that movie. I was having trouble getting work in other movies or television shows because people would say, well, you're just so identified with that, it's very difficult to cast you. And so that was frustrating, and I would get close, but not get it. So I started to do voiceover work on the side, something I hadn't even considered. But as I began to do it and people began to like it, I began to work in it a lot. And I've now been doing voiceovers for probably 27 years. I'm fortunate to have, as Mike said, over 5,000 credits. And I work on a lot of the major television shows. I started out in what they call ADR, which is a lot of improvising and group stuff. I still do that, but I also have expanded. I do commercials. You've heard me doing car commercials from Lexus to Toyota to whatever. I do trailers for movies and television shows and promos. I pretty much cover the gamut. I've narrated for History Channel. I've narrated IMAX movies. I've had a really good run of it in that way. And it's allowed me to do another dream, which was a few years ago to start a production company. And we started out by, we produced 3 or 4 short films that did well, and we received a slew of nominations and awards thanks to that, and we've now moved up. We've bought the rights to 4 books. We have about 8 projects in development, and we're about to make the move into feature films. And hopefully very soon now you'll be seeing a film produced by somebody that was in Brockport as well. And I hope you'll catch it when it comes. So thanks.
So it is, I have to echo what Paul says, it is so great to sit on the main stage. So many great memories for me here at Brockport. And like Stu, for me, when becoming an actor, for me started when I was about 8 years old. Had a chance to do a little something in elementary school, and just the whole process of that, and to see the impact, and have people actually applaud after you did something that scared you to death, was exhilarating. Also, growing up being born in the 50s, growing up in the 50s and the 60s, and there was so much social and political unrest at that time. Whether it was civil rights or women's rights or whatever. I remember being a young kid and thinking, there's something wrong with this picture. Why can't we all just get along? And as I used to really emulate Richard Boone, who was an actor, had a TV series called Paladin. And I loved his character because he dressed in black. He was supposed to be the bad guy, because the good guys always wore white. But he dressed in black. And he was a hired gun. And his character was a hired gun, and he went around protecting people that needed to be protected. And I was really taken by, just all of that. The character, and he's like an anti-hero, but he's doing good things, and maybe we need somebody like that. How can we do that as a human being in real life? And watching him do other characters, I said, he has a chance to really affect a lot of people's lives. And coupling that with that whole elementary school thing, I said, I really like doing this. This is fun. I can actually make it. I made a determination that maybe by something that I do, a role that I would play, might help someone to understand somebody else's life a little bit more. If they know who this person is, when they actually meet them walking down the street, then maybe they'll have a different response to them. So it kind of, at a young age, I just had all these feelings. And acting was the way that I got to do that. It was also a way to get away from my parents. So, I could do stuff on stage. Just sit, I'm slapping you. That's what it says in the script. You can't tell me what to do. So it was great. And I remember watching the Gidget movies, because I lived in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and it's snowing like crazy. You know, when the sun is out in the middle of January, and it's just so bright, but I'm freezing my butt off because it's January, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. The sun is shining, but I'm freezing. I'm moving to California. That is the feeling. So I was watching those videos, just got you. So after that, you know, I acted when I was in junior high school, and I had a chance to, you know, audition for several, at least interview at a couple of undergrad schools like Boston University. But I was living in Rochester area at that time. I graduated from Leroy High School. I don't know if you know that place, but it's close to Brockport. And so I decided to come here because it was much smaller. You know, like I love the size of this field. It is just perfect. You know, for getting a really good message across. People can hear you, can communicate. We had some wonderful times here. And so what I found was a great community of kids that were really dedicated to trying to do something with their lives, not just become actors. And so the curriculum that we had some amazing teachers when we were here. Gisela Fichtner, who hopefully will be able to join us. Yeah.
Oh, there you are!
Gisela! Good to see you! Oh my gosh, I was wondering where they put you. She was right in front of me. We had Gisela. She was my first acting teacher in improv class. And the first thing she said to me is, when are you going to do some black theater? I was like, can I maybe take a class first? But she kind of really pushed, you know, to do more. Her improv class was awesome. Learned so much. We had Dr. Bakshi, Sriram Bakshi.
He was supposed to be here.
He taught us theater history and other things like that. We had Danny Proctor, who is an amazing guy. We have Bob Davidson is here, one of our fellow students. And where is Bob? He's in the back of the room. Yeah. We did stuff in this theater. I can remember we had great classes, great professors. We had a program where, you know, after you took your classes and everything, you had to do a senior project in order to graduate with a degree in theater. If you failed your senior project, you got a degree in speech. And we had Lane Reynolds was with us teaching us lighting, and I can remember falling asleep in front of House 1 with a C-wrench in my hand. And those stands over there to hold the lights up that are rotor-locked together, we did those. But the depth of the class that we had, I remember my senior project, I did several pieces from Ain't Supposed to Die a Natural Death. And as an actor, we had to direct ourselves, and we had to write out everything that we did. What was the arc? What was the reason? What's the background? What's the character description? So we had to do a written paper. Then I had Gisela come in, and she looked at my work just once. We only had one consultation. She gave me some notes. I took those notes, and I did the performance. After the performance, we had an oral exam with Dr. Bakshi. So they're sitting there, so they read your paper, they saw your performance, and they critiqued it. And everything they had a question with, you had to go back and rewrite your thesis, come back with the answer. If you passed, if you got an A or a B, then you got the degree in theater. Otherwise, you were a speech major. So with that kind of care, actually, and the depth of the connection that we made, you know, with our professors, I had a great foundation created here, you know, at Brockport for those 4 years. And after I graduated, I went to grad school. I went to the University and Resident Theater Association audition, and Gisela grabbed me and said, "You need to do this." I said, "Okay." She said, "You should have put your application in already." I said, "But you didn't tell me." Doesn't matter. We have 1 week to get ready for the regionals. And so I did that using my senior project and some other things. And ended up at the national finals, and Paul was there too. And I got about 18 or 20 offers for grad school. And I went to the University of Michigan. I went there mainly because I had a 1-year program. And I only wanted to go to school for 1 more year. And it was full scholarship. But again, all of that is based on the foundation that I built here at Brockport. So I did University of Michigan for a year. And then after that, I went to New York City and hooked up with Paul again at Rugoff's Theater on 3rd across from Bloomingdale's. We were selling popcorn together. That was my first job in in New York as I was working to get all my college credits off my resume. So I did a lot of off-Broadway stuff. I worked with the Negro Ensemble Company there for several years. Got a really good foundation. Started my commercial career there. I've done about 200 commercials since then. And started my movie career there. And then in '78, we had a big strike, SAG strike. And it was freezing cold. I was doing a play at the Henry Street Settlement. It was on the lower East Side. And I was walking home in the freezing cold, and I said to myself, this is not good. I need to change this. So that was '78. So at that point, I decided to try Los Angeles. So I moved to LA to visit some cousins for a while. And I booked like 2 or 3 jobs within a week. And so, I called my then wife and said, honey, we're moving. And so we moved to Los Angeles. The marriage didn't last, but the career did. We're still good friends. And when I got to LA, what I did was I really, Paul talked about it's show business. So I took a lot of discipline that I learned here and put it to work. I sent out like 500 resumes, but I didn't send them out to agents. I sent them out to casting agents, to people who could get me a job. And as I sent those out, I played what I call the 10% rule. 10% of these people would actually answer me. The other 90% are going to throw this picture in the garbage. So of those 500, I got 50 responses. Of those 50, 5 people said, would you come in and see me? And out of those 5, I got one person, Sharon Himes, who hired me. And she hired me to do my first stuff on The White Shadow and Paris with James Earl Jones. And then she asked me, she said, okay, I put you 2 or 3 things. Do you have an agent? I said, no. She said, oh, well, call this guy. And so I called this guy, Dick Lovell. And that's how I got my first agent. Was doing it that way. And I had already gotten a commercial agent because I had one in New York through that industry. And from then I did Greatest American Hero for about 3 years. And I did a lot of episodic guest starring on Marquis Blue, Hill Street Blues, a lot of different things, RoboCop, several movies. And the one thing I had, when I got to Los Angeles, I found that I had a tremendous advantage. Because when I would go out for auditions and I could, kind of hear what other people were doing, the advantage that I had was a theater background. Because you had a chance to develop a character. You knew what the arc was. You knew what the purpose of the character was. In Gisela's class, we would lay down on the ground, and she would say, try to find something, try to be aware of what's around you, and find something that you wouldn't normally see, and pay attention to. And I remember Paul was laying there, and he said, there's a red light flashing in the corner. And I was like, where? And he had seen this little thing, so I focused even more, and I heard this little beep, beep. But those kind of classes that we had heightened that sense of awareness that you really need as an actor if you're going to interact with somebody on stage. Created a foundation for me so that when I went in for an audition, the theater foundation as an actor just put me over the top in terms of having a tremendous advantage over people that I was working against or auditioning with who simply had a film background because they didn't have the depth that we got here in Brockport. And so that's really been a foundation for my career. And I've been in Los Angeles now for 32 years. So I've been working, ever since I left Brockport in '74 for 37 years. And it's all because of the foundation that we got here.
Wegmans. I'm back. I am back. I'm going to talk about my political science criminal justice career. Because that was my major. That's my degree. I can't find my diploma. Searched last summer. Can't find it. We have to talk about that. When I was here, I was a junior, and I got a call from an admissions counselor that said to me, you're missing part of your core. What is it? It is, you are missing a fine arts course. Intro to theater. Take Intro to Theater. It's in Edwards, right? Is that the big? Yeah, that's all right.
said, no, I can't do that. I can't stay awake in those large rooms. Is there anything I could do anything in? Because I didn't do a play in high school. I only saw plays in high school, were the ones that I had to see, because there was an assembly. But she said there is an improv class. You can take an improv class. I believe you were the teacher. I think you were. Don't throw me under the bus now. I don't remember you, Bill. I took this improv class. Sally Rubin was here at the time. Yeah. And I thought that was just the most unbelievable experience, the expression of doing that, and not really thinking about wanting to do that for your life. I'm going to get back to the criminal justice degree and the power of that degree. So I would finish my improv class and I'd go to the bar. Never mind. So I'd go back to my apartment. In stage 16, which is no longer here. Does anybody know where that was? It was a modular apartment complex, right? No. I remember it because the exterior was rusted. And apparently somebody told me that was the idea. And it worked, because it was all rust, the whole thing. Didn't lean against it, because you got rust. So I would leave the improv class just thrilled out of my mind, and go to my criminal justice classes, political science classes, almost equally thrilled, not quite, but still, furthering, what my major was. I got some help back then because I think that Sally, who worked in the theater department, she was a professor there. I wanted to take another of the acting classes, but they weren't open unless you were theater major, I believe, at the time. So I met the department chair at the time and told him what I wanted to do, and he let me do that. He let me take some of the other theater classes that were just for theater majors, which completely thrilled me. So my senior year here, I worked as hard as I could the rest of the spring semester of my junior year to finish up my own major, and left the schedule open to take more theater classes, still not thinking about changing my life direction, whatever I was going to do. But absolutely thrilled to further this, I don't know, experiment, exploration, whatever it was. But isn't it the truth that, like Stu was saying earlier, that, to be open, to throw, what was the expression you were saying before? About throwing yourself into it.
Yeah.
Being naked.
Yep.
Let me tell you something. No, I can't tell you that. I want to be here for the rest of this talk. But let me tell you something. When I graduated with my political science criminal justice degree, and I was so thrilled. And I didn't know it then. I knew it about a month afterwards. But I had a really good idea then that I probably wasn't going to do that. And I remember sharing that with friends, and they would say, so, I mean, what was the point? I mean, you went through 4 years of college. And I said, no, that is the point. The point was that what happened here in those 2 years changed my entire existence. It didn't matter that it was my major. What happened was that I somewhere inside of myself, with the help of really incredible people that were teaching me and guiding me and showing me things and telling me things that I knew nothing about, a whole different world, that my world did change. It changed here. It didn't matter what my degree said. I walked out of Brockport ready for something. I moved to New York. I became an extremely good waiter. Really good bartender, back to being a really good waiter. But what I did do when I was there is I started to find, I already set myself up to be open, to let new things come into my life and what I wanted to do. I studied really hard in New York. I always felt like I was a little bit behind the 8 ball. When I moved to New York, the Brat Pack was coming around. So if you weren't doing movies by the time you were 24 years old, people thought you had a serious problem. But it didn't matter. I mean, I had a work ethic about studying and continuing, and I really wanted to work in film. And I connected with a theater company in New York called Circle Rep and worked in their lab there, and eventually was invited into the company. Still really wanted to work in movies. I think everyone that I knew had gotten a job in a movie, except me. I got a job in a movie once, doing one scene in Malcolm X. For some reason on IMDb, it's still on my resume. The night before we were going to shoot the scene, they called and said they wrote the scene out. That happened twice, actually. So I got my first film when I was 36. I guess the lesson in that is, how much do you believe in yourself and persevere and keep going? Because when I finally did get hired in the film, which is what I really wanted, my life shifted and I started to work in film and television in a way that I'd never had to that point. And it really kind of shifted everything in a really good way. I lived in New York till 5 years ago. 5 years ago, my wife, we were in LA working on something, and I came home one day and she said, I found our house. I said, I didn't know we were looking. She said, we were. I'm permanently there now. I have 2 children. One is a English creative writing major at Bowdoin College in Maine. The other one is 8 years old, and if it was 1968, I know he's going to be Abby Hoffman. I know it. It's really intense. So I get off the thruway today on Route 19. I think the last time that I was here was maybe 30 years ago. I think my roommate from Stage 16 called me 30 years ago and said, we need to go to a bar now in Brockport. Seemed like a logical thing to do. They had a lot of weird years, so we did that. That was the last time, 30 years ago. You come down 19, you pass through Bergen, the Robin Gun Club, and the things that you see, and I'm like, yeah, wow. And then you come over the hill, and there it is. You see the buildings in the distance. You see Mortimer, Perry, where I live. And I thought, wow, I can't believe it. It's been so long. It's longer than I haven't been here than when I was here, at least in a life sense. And I thought, it's just so amazing to be back and to see all the houses that I've been to parties in. And then I thought, no, that's not true. I had a chance to share with some of the folks 2 months ago. My sister, I have 4 sisters, amazing girls, really powerful. Can't be around them all for more than a day and a half tops. And really dynamic women. And one of them just retired as a full-bird colonel in the Air Force. And about 3 years ago at the air show at Niagara Falls Air Force Base, she called me up a few months before and she said, hey, listen, the Air Force Thunderbirds, which is their version of the Navy's Blue Angels, they're in town and you got an invite. And that's really tough to get. Are you coming here to ride with the Thunderbirds? I said, you bet. I'm an auto motorsport fan, and this is like the holy grail. So I go there and I meet the pilot in that, and I'm in Thunderbird 8. We start the air show. Takes off, 90 degrees, 440 miles an hour, 6.5 Gs. I'm like, wow. So the guy goes over to clear airspace over Lake Ontario for 60 miles by 15 miles to go and do everything that the rest of the Thunderbirds are doing in the air show. Fantastic. He does everything, every loop-to-loop spin, 9.2 Gs over 10 seconds. I did not throw up, I did not pass out. And I wear that as a serious badge of honor. He did everything. We finished it and he said, everything in the show, he goes, listen, we got pounds left. That's what they call fuel. Is there anything else you want to do? And I said to him, no. It was really tough. And I said, actually, CJ was his name. I said, there is one thing that I would like to do. I graduated college not far from here, and I wouldn't mind seeing campus. And he was like, all right, where is it? Did you know? And I said, well, I'm looking at Rochester out the right-hand window. I said, if you're looking this way over the lake, it's that way to the right. So he calls Rochester International Airport, says, it's Thunderbird 8, and I don't think they hear that every day. And they're like, yeah, Thunderbird 8, I told you. So he says, request a flyby over Brockport, the campus, SUNY Brockport, and they said, sure, taking it at 10,000 feet. So the pilot says to me, TC Clark, says to me, do you know how to get there? And I said, well, in the general direction over there. I mean, I went to a lot of parties, but I still remember where Brockport is. So he said, great. So he's flying that way. Rochester's out here, Buffalo's way out there, we're going. So finally I find the barge canal. I'm like, follow that. And we're going to make it there. So he's coming in, and there it is, right in front of me. And I'm like, wow, I haven't been here in so long. This is amazing. So he says, you want to get down there? And I said, sure. He calls back. He goes, request a low flyby, 1,000 feet. And they said, sure, take it in 1,000 feet. That's like Mortimer and maybe 2 more. There's an altimeter on there, so I know he's down to about 800 feet. That's Mortimer in 1.5. So he's coming in, and he said, just so they know we're coming, and he hits the afterburners, and the snow shows up, turns it on his side, and just rips right down the campus. There's Rockport, like, go on. So I have been back. Today I was 800 feet away. Didn't make it all the way, but my heart is here, and I am so happy to be here today.
Outstanding, gentlemen. Thank you very much. And I'm sure there are a few questions. So Bill and Betsy will be coming around with microphones. So if you have a question, just raise your hand, and they will get to you with a microphone. So here we go.
There's a guy right here. Gray t-shirt. Right in the center section.
Hello. I was working with Adam Sandler in The Longest Yard.
How was it? Yeah. It was good. It was good. Adam has a lot of friends working with him. And you know what I love, Adam Sandler? It was one of those jobs where we started the first couple of weeks, and I was wondering, I wonder how this is going to go. I really wasn't sure. And then my son at the time was 12, and we were shooting in New Mexico. And I was walking with Sam, and Adam pulled up in a golf cart and said, Sam? And Sam turned and was like, that's Adam Sandler. And Adam said, come on, hop in, we got 2 things we got to do. And Sam looked at me, and I'm like, go. So we hopped in the golf cart. Adam took him to the little video village on the set, showed him his trailer, this, that, boom. Half an hour later, he brings Sam back, and he says, listen, I know it's early, but I think you're my best friend. and no matter how the work thing was going on, I mean, I did not love the guy for that moment with my son. So it was great. One of the greatest times I ever had.
This question is for Paul. It's weird to say that because my name's Paul too. Do you have a name for your new feature film?
Which one?
The one that you said you might be producing, or that you are.
We have 8 in development. We have 4 books that we own. One's called Murder at the Brown Palace, which is about a murder that took place in a Denver hotel in 1911. And we also have a number of westerns. You guys don't know this, but I'm very into the Old West, and I belong to something called the Hole in the Wall Gang, and every September I get to go up to Wyoming, where Woods and Sundance' actual hideout was. We're about 50 other guys, and we're in the saddle for 6 to 8 hours a day for about a week. And so a lot of our projects revolve around the West. I have another one that takes place around a true story about the Indian massacre in southern Colorado. We have several. The one that's closest to production is called I Want My Daddy Back. It's a Christmas story that's based on a true story. Also about a young girl who became estranged from her father, and he ended up becoming an alcoholic. And it just so turns out her mother took her to a department store to see Santa Claus, and he happened to be there working at Santa Claus. And when she was asked what she wanted for Christmas, which was very hard for him to say, she said, I don't really want anything Santa Claus, I just want my dad. And that changed his life, so it actually happened. So, true story. So we are getting very close on that. We have several others. Be glad to put you on the mailing list. Yeah. But that's one, and we're close. It takes a while to get a company built up, especially as a startup. We have several people involved. My wife is involved as my partner. My wife, again, she's a 6-time Emmy nominee and a 2-time winner for sound, so she's a big part of this as well, along with other people. So I'll try to let you know. I'll try to keep you guys informed of it. Hopefully we're very close on that one.
I have a question for Mr. Fichtner. When you said you sat through assemblies in high school, you went to Maryville. That's
correct.
Okay.
Well, come on, are there really Maryville graduates here?
My sisters went to Maryville.
My dad went to
Buffalo, Sabres hat. I know where I am.
Well, and the reason I know that is my mom told me to tell you this, that Sam Militello, Tony Militello, Joe Castrino, and the rest of the Crusaders hockey team that you played with when you were younger, they say hello, they want to give you their regards and best wishes, and they hope you're doing all right. So.
Who's your mom?
Shirley Jasker, she married Jeff Jasker.
Yes.
Paula. You guys played hockey. I've heard tons of stories. I won't share all of them.
I won't let you share all of them.
Either will, what was his name?
Stop right now, buddy. Stop off. Betsy, walk away. Well, you know what? I'm going to see Tony tomorrow.
Okay.
And that's just fantastic.
Yeah.
We were, just to tell you really quick, there's this hockey league started up in Chickawaga, and none of us could really, I don't know if we couldn't get on a team, but we all lived in 2 blocks, in a 2-block radius. Militellos, Castrinos, Fichtners, everybody was selling us. So we put ourselves in the league. We could get enough money to have jerseys matched, that's it. We looked like the Bad News Bears, and the first year everybody else had beautiful, fancy uniforms, and we won that league that year.
My
That's
dad
right.
had a trophy in the basement. So.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Hey, my question is for Stu. I grew up watching your Disney Channel movies, and I absolutely love them, and Brooklyn, Poor Time, and everything. But for Disney Channel, do you have a favorite movie that you've done and that you've worked on, or are they all the same? Or not?
Nope. Actors will say this and writers will say it as well, which is they're like their children, that there's things that are good and bad about each and every one of them. But the thing about the whole Disney Channel experience, and if I could boast for one moment, when they first started doing their original movies, they were doing 1 a month. And when they had completed 50 original movies, they had a party celebrating the completion of 50 movies, and I had written 10 of them. And if you know anything about the way the business works, that was a pretty good batting average at the time. And part of the reason that I felt like I was so successful for them was my kids were the exact same age as the kids in every single one of those movies. So if you watch them, the kids got progressively older with every movie I wrote. And people would always say to me, I can't believe your office is at home. How can you focus? How can you have the discipline? How can you do it? And I said, I'll tell you why. Because it has double-sided acoustic, recording studio doors that I close when I'm working. Then I open the doors, I listen to my kids for 15 minutes, I close the door, and And the thing that was so great about that aspect of it is one night, dailies are the footage that you get from what's been shot that day. And as a writer, you're often not on the set, but I had a good enough relationship with the channel that they would send me the dailies. And one night I was sitting in the family room watching, I think it was from Smart House, and I was watching the dailies come in. And my son's sitting there with me, and he's 10 years old at the time, and we're watching the dailies, and he says, Dad, Rosie and I had that fight a month ago. And I went, yeah, you did. The authenticity of what kept getting me hired was, again, what we've all been talking about, is I wrote what I knew, and it was very successful. So thank you very much. But each and every one of them had something particularly wonderful and memorable about them.
This question's for the later 3. Sorry, Stu. Do you guys like acting in movies or TV better? Because I know the TV thing is kind of more like stable. I mean,
whatever pays.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends. It's funny the way theater is an actor's medium. Because once you're on stage and you're doing it, that's it. There's nobody saying cut. There's no director that comes in. Theater is an actor's medium. It's interesting because the thing we do most as an actor is the thing that pays the least.